Last year, protesters showed a lot of interest in Governor Walker's appearance at the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Annual Business Day in Madison. This year, only a couple dozen turned out to protest the governor and WMC. Hey, hey. WMC has got to go. Inside, the governor talked about how much the state's changed over the last year.
Last year, many of you who are here joining us at this session on Business Day, remember I held up that bumper sticker that said Wisconsin's open for business. Well, that was great, and certainly we had done a number of things even as early as last year at this time. But really, I hope you've seen in the last year that being open for business in Wisconsin is a lot more than just a bumper sticker or a slogan. It's a way of doing business. And I hope you've seen the results. Now, we're not done yet, by no means. We'd like to do a whole lot more to help the state continue to grow and expand and add more jobs and more opportunity and more prosperity. But let's look back for a second. Last year at this time, in fact, about a month before I spoke to you, in January, after I took the oath of office, we had looked at being in a position where for the 3 years prior, we had lost 150,000 private sector jobs in the state. In other terms, that means 150,000 of our friends and neighbors in Wisconsin had lost their jobs and their families were out of work. Since last year, we've not only seen us reverse that course, we've added thousands of new jobs in this state. In fact, the unemployment rate today is not only lower than it was a year ago at this time, the unemployment rate in Wisconsin is the lowest it's been since prior to 2008 when we saw the height of the economic meltdown. We've seen in the last year, and Department of Financial Institutions tracks this, almost 2.5% increase in the number of businesses that were incorporated and added to the state of Wisconsin. We've seen, as Charlie mentioned and many of you talked about in the introduction before, we've seen a change of heart in terms of our employers in this state, the people who create jobs in Wisconsin. And the feeling from just a few years ago when only 10% thought we were heading in the right direction to well over 90% who say we are heading in the right direction.
There was also another issue ripe to compare and contrast.
I could spend a whole afternoon talking about the differences with Illinois. In fact, in some ways, I should almost add to my team of economic development specialists Governor Quinn, because in Illinois, now, see, that only encourages me, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Governor Quinn. I mean, think about it. Last year, he said he was not going to use the same sorts of things we were using in Wisconsin to balance their budget. Well, clearly he did not. They raised taxes, in case any of you do business in Illinois. For those that don't, be reminded, they raised taxes on individuals 67% last year. They raised them on businesses 46%. Instead of fixing their budget crisis, they only made matters worse down in the land of Lincoln. And so much so, they still have a budget deficit. In fact, last week they were talking about cutting $2 billion from Medicaid, a system that we actually added $1.2 billion to in Wisconsin. They're talking about cutting $2 billion to Medicaid in the state of Illinois. You know, look, on top of that, while we made long-term structural reforms to put not only our state but our local governments back into balance when it came to our budgets, their budget's so out of whack out there. Not only is their budget in crisis, and they're looking at the potential of not only adding to the tax burden, but looking at the prospect of laying off thousands of public employees, shutting down public facilities. Even the idea that their comptroller and treasurer down there actually has warned investors not to buy bonds, and about 2-3 weeks ago, Moody's downgraded their bond rating. In fact, it's the lowest in the country. It's about the only thing that's been good news to Jerry Brown, the governor of California, in about the last year, is that they're now no longer, at least according to Moody's, the worst state in the country when it comes to a bond rating. Illinois is. Now think about that. That probably explains why their unemployment rate is 9.8%. It explains why on the survey that was conducted last year of states from 1 to 50, Chief Executive Magazine, they showed our ranking went from 41, we've been hovering for years in the bottom 10, so we never like to talk about it much. We went from 41 a year ago up to 24, 17 spots, the fastest increase of any state in the country. That same survey showed that Illinois has dropped 40 spots in the last 5 years. 40 spots. Moody's, unlike Illinois' situation, Moody's called our budget credit positive. The Pew Center, which says that Illinois has the worst funded pension system in the country. In contrast, ours is one of the few that's fully funded for our state employees. Our unemployment rate 7.1%, theirs is 9.8%. you can see the contrast. And really, you can see there's probably no greater example in America of the failed policies I'm trying to counter and that some are trying to put back into the capital than what we see down south in the land of Lincoln and Springfield. We've got to counter that. We've got to move forward with that. Like I said, in some ways, Governor Quinn may be a great impetus for me to help bring businesses and opportunity up from Illinois and from other places into the state of Wisconsin. But we have a unique opportunity to tell our story and to get that message out and continue to grow.
For the MacIver Institute, I'm Bill Osmolsky.